In this video, I'm going to discuss my goals for 2025. Let's jump into it. How's it going, guys? My name's Matt and this is my beard, and welcome to today's video. So, following my trip to Warhammer World and looking at my hobby as it sits at this moment in time, I thought it would be a good idea to step back, take account of what I actually own in my pile of shame or pile of opportunity or just stuff that I own. But then also look at my skills and look at my YouTube channel and look at what I want out of 2025. So in this video, I'm going to break that down and set up my goals for the year. And it'll be good to reflect on this next year. So I've broken it down into 6 different sections. I'm going to take it step at a time. I'll be putting chapters in the description, and also if you're on a tablet or a games console watching this, you can actually skip through to this specific sections, but watch it all the way through because there will be a line of continuity through there. So let's jump into the first section, Necromunda. 2024 saw my first step into Necromunda. It's a game system that I've been aware of on the periphery for quite some time, but it's never been something that I've stepped into. And it kind of reignited this huge passion for the hobby and really helped me go back into the painting side of things. First and foremost, it was more so about the size of the forces that you're working with, your skirmish gangs. So for example, my first gang in Necromunda was the Paladin Enforcers. And, you know, I've got the enforcers themselves, and then also some patrolmen, and I painted them up within a matter of weeks, and I was really happy with them, and I was playing with them, and I had some good fun with it. And that's kind of like started this journey in the Necromunda scene for me. I'm really quite a strong believer in community, and I believe that, especially in this kind of game system that we play, community spirit goes a long way, and as such, I've actually become quite close friends with a lot of people globally, just surrounding Necromunda, and that's a beautiful thing. So to me, Necromunda does have a really special place in my heart, and for my goals for 2025, I really want to kind of hyper focus on that to a degree. Now, I do have other game systems that I want to play or want to explore or want to, you know, expand upon, but for the most part, Necromunda's kind of been my baby in this. It's been my real sort of draw into this whole world, especially on YouTube as well. I mean, a lot of my videos are Necromunda focused. So I think that sets us up quite nicely for where I currently am. So this year I started and finished a Paladin Enforcers gang. They're cool, I like them. They're a little bit clunky to play, but outside of that, they're all right. And I think I'm done with them. I feel like I'm done with the Paladin Enforcers for now, and they are painted, they're shelved, they're great, and I love them. But I think for now, my Paladin Enforcers are done. So I moved on to Escher. So the back end of last year saw quite an arduous journey to get my first founding gang of Escher sort of done. But it's kind of ignited a bit of a different passion. And one of the things that I did see when I was down in Warhammer World was somebody had created a gang which had Day of the Dead style face paint and had kind of like multicoloured like sort of paint strokes with like on the armour, and it really kind of made me think, there's different ways you can stylize your gang. Now obviously the game itself is its own right, and the way that you portray your models is kind of irrelevant when it comes to the game system. But for my first founding gang, I really loved how it turned out, but it's made me want to do more gangs within Necromunda, but also within Escher. So I think this year, I'm going to continue on my Escher journey. I did get the Chimera X whilst I was down there, so that'll be quite a fun one to paint up. But I think I want to explore some new colourways and some more sort of headcanon and some more sort of custom gang compositions that I would create myself and sort of deploy on a new set of models. So throughout the year, I think I might look at expanding on my Escher collection in full. Now, alongside that, I did also buy a few Ash Waste Nomads characters whilst, again, down at Warhammer World. Now, these were resin sculpts which you couldn't get on the online store. Now, Ash Waste Nomads in their own right, they're quite interesting, and I like the idea of them. They're quite mysterious, and also the composition of the models, like how they're sculpted. It kind of like, it touches an aesthetic that I'm quite fond of, and therefore moving away from sort of sector, the sector mortalis, or the sort of underhive aesthetic. I think it's going to be quite an interesting one, and going back to sort of my basing roots and having sort of a Desolate Wasteland style base with some really cool grunged up sort of dusty characters will be quite an interesting one to explore. So I think for the Ash Waste Nomads, I'm really quite looking forward to creating a gang of nomads. Now, as of recording this video, it's before the LVO, so the LVO is this weekend, which is the Las Vegas Open, and there has been a section denoted for Necromunda. So usually when they do their announcements, they'll tell you what they're going to announce, as in the sections or the parts of the hobby or the systems that they're going to expand upon. But this year they've actually added Necromunda to that mix, and one of the silhouettes that you saw in the trailer for the LVO releases, there's a little bit of speculation as to one of those images being an Ash Waste Nomads beast. So if there is the opportunity for that to be a thing, and then potentially a Book of the Wastes or Book of Ash to come out, which focuses on the Ash Waste Nomads, well, I'll be sort of halfway there, because I've got some of the models already. I'm looking to get the actual gang composition itself at some point quite soon, and get a couple of other bits and bobs too. And that does also lend quite nicely onto an idea for some vehicles. I do want to get some cutters for my Escher, and I also want to look at getting a Cargo 8 Ridge Hauler for another gang, and I don't know how that'll work out. It may be for the Escher, and I might do an Escher Ash Wastes gang. But again, these are just ideas at this moment in time, and this will be refined throughout the year. So it all lands back to the idea of me expanding on my existing gangs and potentially getting new gangs through the year. So for the time being, I'm going to expand on the Escher, and I'm also going to open up the Ash Waste Nomads in time to come. And then finally, I want to look at working through a couple of new tiles as well. Terrain is something I really enjoy, and I've got, I went through a whole spat of buying quite a lot of terrain bits, which are currently in boxes waiting for me to play with, just waiting for me to open up and explore my opportunities and ideas. And I currently have one tile. I love the tile. However, there's things that I learned from that tile, and I think I'm going to look at expanding on a new sort of tile aesthetic. So that'll be the sort of, that's my first tile, it always will be kind of thing. But I think for my next tile, I might look at the colour palette a little bit more, and looking at ways in which I can refine down each tile and actually have a line of continuity throughout the rest of my tiles, because eventually I do want to have a 9x9, so like 3x3 board, not 9x9, that would be ridiculous. I do want to have a 3x3 board of tiles, of which I've made myself, so that would be quite an interesting one to explore on. But for here and now, that's Necromunda in a nutshell. Now, one thing to note on the way that I'm formatting this video, it's not going to take into account things that I want to get, or not as much, and I appreciate that there are a handful of models that have been announced for Necromunda which are yet to be released, and I may pick them up as time goes on. But for the time being, the things that I'm going to buy for Necromunda, I don't really have a list. I think there are a couple of things that I do want to still get for my Ash Waste Nomads gang. So for example, the Book of the Outlanders, that's one of them, and also an actual just a gang for the Ash Waste Nomads, like the gang box. Those are the two things for those. And then for my Escher, there's just a couple of the champions that I quite fancy getting my hands on, and I'm probably going to get another box of a base gang for the Escher to play around with another aesthetic for. But outside of that, Necromunda wise, I'm pretty much sorted. I've got quite a few bits and bobs to be on with. So for the time being, there's not really much more to buy, so to speak, for my Necromunda adventures. So let's jump on to the next topic, which is 40k. Warhammer 40k is a game system that me and my friends have played quite a lot of in the past. And in fact, over the past sort of 7 or 8 years, I've dipped my toe into it quite a number of times. My first real big huzzah back into the hobby was with the Death Guard. I loved the Death Guard, and they were really, really good fun to build and make and paint. The aesthetic that I went for was sort of more 30k-esque with the cream armour, but with all the grotesque Nurgle bits as well. I got a 30k Mortarion and a 30k Typhus, and I just loved how I built and painted them up. And then I went on to the Tyranids last year, so I built up quite a substantial collection of Tyranids ahead of moving into this home, and then I spent the year basically building them, and I've got over 120 odd Tyranid models that are built, finished, painted. There's only 2 left that I need to paint, and I don't know why I keep on putting them off, but they are what they are. So I think for this year, I've decided on the Dark Angels, and specifically the Deathwing Assault Terminator focused army of Dark Angels. I love Terminators. Terminators are absolutely gorgeous model to play with and to build and just to work with when you're painting. You've got enough surface area to really get some great detail in there, and then also the weathering side of things, and the colour pattern for the Deathwing Assault, that cream with green. Obviously, they used to be black. They used to be black plate, and then if they suffered a wound on a specific part of their body, they would change the colour of that armour to cream. And then I think it was some orcs they were going up against, or it was either orcs or Tyranids. It was a horde army. And basically they painted their armour in cream, thinking that they were all going to suffer mortal wounds and die, but in actual fact they succeeded in that battle. So as an ode to that, going forward, the Dark Angels, the Deathwing, decided to continue on that cream armour aesthetic. So moving into the Deathwing for myself, I've already built the Deathwing Assault box that came out, so I've built those models up. They are currently off their bases. I don't know if you can see it in shot, but they're actually just here. And I also have the task force, or the battle force rather, that came out around Christmas time, and that's yet to be built. And I'm in the process of actually doing my first video for the Dark Angels for the channel at the moment. That's why these guys are partially built, and that's why they're not built yet. So I'm in that kind of process at the moment. So for the Dark Angels, I would like to get my Dark Angels done. Now, thankfully, there's not as many models as there is Tyranids. However, the detail work that's going to be put into each individual model, I'm going to be pushing myself. I'm going to be exploring some weathering techniques, and I'm going to be exploring oil washes and that sort of thing, and try and get myself to a position whereby the models that I pump out at the end are like higher than tabletop quality, potentially even display quality miniatures for each one, which is a task amongst itself, considering that I've currently got around about 44, 45 models specifically for the Deathwing. So for me, it makes a lot more sense to have that time investment, have that sort of planning step done, and that's where I'm currently at with them. Now, on the back end of that for 40k, there are a couple of big models which I would like to get, and I made mention of this in my, in my most recent video surrounding Warhammer World. When I went down to Warhammer World, they had some amazing dioramas, and they had some beautiful setups, and also access to visibly see all of the, the models that you can potentially get yourself. And with that, it really compounded my fascination and obsession to a degree of the Reaver Titan. I love the Reaver Titan. It's just it's such an enigmatic model, and it's such a vast model to get, that I feel that when I next go to Warhammer World, that is going to be my sort of That's going to be my big purchase. And depending upon funds, I'm looking to try and get myself a Thunderhawk at the same time, and hopefully Hierophant. These are 3 models of which I've coveted for the best part of 2 decades now. More so the Hierophant and the Thunderhawk. Those are 2 models of which I've wanted for those 2 decades, but it's only within the last 2 or 3 years where I've really cottoned on to the love for a Reaver Titan. So whilst that's a big basket, that's a very expensive basket, those models, all 3 of them, will be amazing to add to my collection. Obviously my Hierophant will go into my Behemoth army, and the Reaver Titan and the Thunderhawk will go into my Dark Angels army, and they'll be painted up for those, for that army. And I really look forward to going through that process. It's kind of the holy grail of it's the pinnacle of your Warhammer journey in 40k. If you were to get a Titan of some description, or if you were to get a large vehicle, a Forge World vehicle, which is kind of your, it's your ruby in the rough. And that's, those 2 models are kind of, that's where my head's at with it. So further into the year, most likely around sort of June, July, August time, when I do go down to Warhammer World next time round, I'm hopefully going to be picking up these models, which is a very exciting prospect to say the least. And whether or not they get finished this year is a completely different kettle of fish, because you're looking at 2-3 weeks of prep work before you even start gluing the model together. So it makes a lot of sense for me to temper that expectation of finishing these models by the end of the year. But it's still a tangible goal, as long as I play my cards right, and as long as I make sure that I put the money aside each month that I need to make this quite gargantuan purchase when I go down next. So that pretty much wraps up 40k. I do want to mess around a little bit with some different styles of Tyranids. I've got a box of Termagants that has kind of just sat on my shelf, still in its cellophane, and I think I would like to have a look at different styles of Tyranid, but that's like a test model, bit of fun, not really going anywhere just yet. It's just because I do enjoy painting Tyranids, I do enjoy building Tyranids, and I think it'd be pretty cool to sort of jump back in and see what I can do with it. So that kind of, that wraps up the 40k section. So the next section is Kingdom Death. Kingdom Death. Where do I start with Kingdom Death? It's such an interesting game. The system is quite odd, and it's quite in depth, but the sculpts, the miniatures themselves, are absolutely gorgeous. Now, I started collecting Kingdom Death just before COVID, so we're talking back end of 2019, well, it was start of 2020, but that kind of window of time there is where I started getting, lots of bits and bobs for Kingdom Death. So I have the base box, I have the Dragon King, I have a few of the pin-up models, and a few of the game system models as well that you could get on top, but none of the big bosses. The only additional big bosses that I have are the vignettes. So I have 2 vignettes, which is the Gigalion, so the white Gigalion, and I also have the Kalenian Butcher, which is a very recent purchase. Alongside the Naked Future box. So the Naked Future box was revealed, and it was the Oblivion Mosquito, which is within, which currently doesn't have any box art, it doesn't have any rules or anything like that, and kind of as an interesting turn of events, Adam Poots, who's the owner and one of the main designers of the game, he's actually asked for creators and for painters to submit their designs up, fully painted models of the Oblivion Mosquito, so that it can potentially be used in promotional material. So something that I'm going to be doing quite soon, in fact, is building up my Oblivion Mosquito and painting it up. Now, there are a couple of challenges there, however, the reality behind this challenge is the fact that the Oblivion Mosquito currently doesn't have any instructions, and if anybody here has tried to build a larger scale Kingdom Death model before, they'll understand that they're not the most intuitive to build. They are great, absolutely phenomenal, but you have to put a little bit more thought and attention into where you're placing things. You may have, say for example, fingers, quite large fingers, which may have to go in a specific slot in a specific order. And if you mess that up, it completely changes the dynamic and aesthetic of the model itself. So you have to be quite careful and put a little bit of time and attention and detail into there. But outside of that, I think something I'd like to get done this year, or something I'd like to at least start on, is getting the base game monsters built and painted. And I've already built my 4 starting survivors, and I would like to get them painted up too. And then I would like to start a game, be it a solo game or a game with a couple of my friends. Once I start the game, that will help me dictate what my next survivors are going to look like aesthetically, because the whole point of the game is that you build your armour according to the hunts that you go on and the resources that you gather. So if I started to build my sort of year 2, year 3, year 4, Lantern year 2, 3 and 4 miniatures, they may not be WYSIWYG, so they may not be what you see is what you get to the armour that they actually have on. So I think it would be quite interesting to kind of go down that rabbit hole and work out what things I need to build up. But I think starting to tackle my Kingdom Death collection will be a really interesting experience for me to build and paint, because it's a lot of flesh, and that's something that I'm going to come on to in a future segment of this video. But it's also an interesting game system that I would like to start to learn, and I would like to start to enjoy. So we now have the next section, which I've dubbed as miscellaneous, but in actual fact it's just 2 systems really that I want to explore, and I want to put a bit of time to, but currently I have very limited data on those 2 things. So let's jump into that. 1. So this section is basically surrounding miscellaneous game systems, 2 specifically which I would like to build up in and start in, specifically with the end goal of playing these 2 systems. Now the first one that I'm going to mention is Trench Crusade. Now I was going to open up my Kickstarter pledge and I was going to get everything. At the time I was ready to pull the trigger on pretty much everything physical, all of the different factions within, and I waited and I gamed it out in my mind and I decided against it. I stopped myself, and that was for a couple of reasons. The first one being it was quite a hefty amount of money to outlay for a game system which I don't really know that well outside of the aesthetic, and that's fine, you know, don't get me wrong. Everything I've seen about it subsequently and beforehand earmarked it as being one of the, you know, the biggest breakthrough games since, funnily enough, Kingdom Death came through on Kickstarter. And that's like 15-16 years ago now. Oh well, possibly a little bit sooner, because I know Kingdom Death's been around longer than its big Kickstarter that kind of brought Kingdom Death Monster to the field, but anyway, I digress. My thought process with Trench Crusade is that because it encourages you to scratch build or to kit bash your own warband or own faction for it, there is a lot of opportunity to have some fun with the narrative, and there's a lot of fun to play around with the lore. Now, I personally landed on the Cult of the Seven-Headed Serpent, and the sculpts that they're looking to release, or have released to those who backed within the Kickstarter, I absolutely adore. So when they become more readily available, and I think this is at the back half of this year, I will look to get the official sculpt of the Cult of the Seven-Headed Serpent. Again, it's just a beautiful game system to look at aesthetically. From a modelling perspective, it'll be really fun to build and paint these models up, and then also to play. It seems relatively straightforward as a game system. It's not tainted by rule diarrhea, or rule bloat. It's one of those things whereby you can look at the rule set already for free online and go, I kind of understand that. And given that a couple of the designers are quite well known within the industry, and they've also put their hand or turned their hand to other game systems which I'm quite familiar with, I feel that it'll be an interesting game system to learn and to play. But for the most part, the painting side of things, I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on that and really going down that sort of grim, dark aesthetic with them, and really kind of go into the visceral detail of weathering and how much I can push the model before it's, well, it'll be on a knife's edge, and that's the thing that I'm looking forward to the most with Trench Crusade. The next game that I'm looking to get into really and build a warband surrounding is actually Mordheim. So Chris from Some City Radio, Chris and I have become quite close friends, and one of the discussions that we did have is surrounding Mordheim. Now Chris has quite a lot of old Mordheim stuff kicking about in his collection, and he's just never had the chance to sort of play a campaign of it or a game of it. And with it having, drawing quite a lot of similarities from a rustic version of Necromunda, it seems like an easy step for me to make. So I've looked into all the different kind of gangs that you can create, or warbands you can create rather, and I've landed on I think it's the Cult of Mor. I think that's what they're called, and they're effectively they're a good. So that they sway into the good side of morality. They worship the god of the dead. So the entity that shepherds the dead to the afterlife, and the leader is a monk with a scythe. And I thought that was sick. So my plan is to create a custom warband specifically for the Cult of Mor, and see where I get with that. Now, that's a longer-winded project in the sense of I've got to source bits, and I may try and get some resin sculpts of certain bits. I may get some old world stuff or some Warhammer Fantasy / Age of Sigmar stuff and convert them across. It'll be a big kit bash warband because there's nothing really off the shelf that you can get for Mordheim. So I'm looking forward to seeing what I do with that. And again, that's probably not going to happen for a couple of months yet, but in the background, these are things that I'm planning. So that lands us into the next section. So we've gone through Necromunda, we've gone through 40k, we've gone through Kingdom Death, and we've gone through the miscellaneous game systems rather. Let's look at the hobby and let's look at the channel. These final two sections are all going to be in one fell swoop. I'm not going to differentiate them, I'm just going to talk about them in full because they kind of work quite well with each other. So the first part we're going to look at is the hobby. Now, since getting back into the hobby seriously last year, my skill with a paintbrush has vastly improved, and that's noticeable. I looked at my very first Tyranid in comparison to my very last Tyranid that I painted, and then I looked at other models that I've painted subsequently, and I can see that I'm starting to get to grips with, pressure control and brush control, and looking at ways in which I can do my blends correctly and how I weather things down. And my focus for 2025 is to continue down that path of discovery, to really open up my skill set. Now, one of the things that I've been considering recently is to get involved with some of the tutors that are available. There are, there's courses that you can go on, or you can ask for one-to-one tuition with these people. And specifically, I want to focus on skin. So one of the things that I really struggle with at the moment is skin tones, flesh tones, that sort of thing. I understand sort of the rough concepts behind applying thin layers of paint to get a great depth within the flesh that you're painting. However, there's only so much you can learn from a YouTube tutorial or through reading an article. Now, being dyslexic, reading through an article or reading through a tutorial, it is a little bit of a hard task for me because I struggle to retain that information. However, having somebody sat there with me live on camera or face to face, person to person, it would make sense for me to have that interaction with them. And if I'm investing in my learning and my skill set, then it makes me better as a painter going forward and makes me a lot more adaptable to the models that I would love to start painting going forward. So one of the big things for me really this year is going to be learning. And I would like to focus on skin and flesh tones. I would like to look at painting faces in a lot stronger of a way and being a lot more confident with eyes as well. Instead of just doing white with a black dot, I would like to actually explore potentially doing a little bit of colour in there as well, and how it is that I can be a lot more precise, and some more tricks and tips that I can sort of develop my skill set surrounding to make eyes pop and make faces pop. We then look into weathering techniques. Now, weathering is something that you'll always get to learn more and more about as time goes on, using pigment powders or streaking grime, oil washes, that sort of thing. And these are all techniques which I really want to kind of laser focus on. I am quite adept at weathering as it is, but there's still parts of the weathering palette, so to speak, that I've not really touched. And so going down the oil wash route, for example, I've got my Villainy Ink range there, which is, an enamel range, and they're currently in the pre-order step for their second run. So the Villainy Ink second range, which I'll be getting, I think it's in February or March when they release it. So I'll be looking to get the full range of that, and that'll give me a lot more colours to choose from when it comes to weathering, when it comes to enamel washes, and when it comes to the oil side of things, or the enamel side of things of the hobby. So I'm looking forward to expanding my understanding there, and really kind of understanding how to pull out detail using weathering techniques, or to amplify a model and frame the more realistic details with weathering, as on the periphery of those details. So that's going to be quite an interesting one for me to go through, and it's going to be one that I'll be employing quite a lot within my my Dark Angels army. I do have a rough idea as to the aesthetic that I'm going for. I've kind of been mentally designing the basing side of things, which is representative of the planet of which these guys are working, or where the war is that they're currently fighting. So from a planning perspective, it makes a lot more sense to me to look down the weathering line and see how I'm going to weather these Terminators up, and what it is that I'm going to do differently to the norm. So then we move on to OSL, which is it's holding hands with airbrush. Now, I have an airbrush rig which is brilliant. It's absolutely phenomenal. For your first airbrush rig, you couldn't ask for much better. It's actually like a professional grade airbrush rig, and I've used it a couple of times, but I've never really quite understood the volumes in thinner to paint and the ratios and that sort of thing. So as part of my learning this year, I would like to try and use an airbrush a little bit more, and be it just for base tones, base colours, for whilst it's absolutely freezing outside and using an aerosol isn't necessarily as effective, or be it to help me develop an OSL palette, so object source lighting, and to really kind of bring a new level or a new dimension to my paint jobs using object source lighting as a medium. Now, I understand the principles to a degree of OSL, and I have tried it once or twice before. However, I failed massively because I didn't really think about glazing as much as you should, and therefore this year OSL is a focus for me. It's something that I want to grow my skill set on. Now, all of these skill-based focuses and goals, it sounds like quite a lot, but the reality is it's not much. It's skin, flesh, tonality, oils, and airbrushing. That's pretty much it. There's not very much more there. Now, obviously, these are an inch wide and a mile deep in the minutiae of detail you can go down. However, it's achievable. It's something that I can focus on, and project dependent, I will focus on one of these new skills to develop. And using my community friends and my connections that I've made through different content creators and that sort of thing, it will be great to lean on them for their expertise and speak to them as to their journey, and to understand where they came from and how they developed the skill set they have, be it through book resource, be it through video resource, be it through direct learning resource, whatever. I'm game as a badger to absorb as much information as I possibly can. Now, on the topic of creators and on the topic of collaboration, this year's setting up to be quite an interesting one in the way of collaboration. I feel there are things that I can tell you right now, and I know that there are things that I can't tell you right now, because these are projects that are happening in the background. However, there's some really exciting stuff going on with a number of different creators that you're aware of, none of us have exposed anything and none of us have said anything, but all I'm going to say is, over the coming weeks, months, and over the course of the year, watch this space, because there are some brilliant, amazing projects that I'm working on with some really cool people, which I think you'll love. So with that in mind, let's look at the collaboration stuff. I would love to work with more people on the channel, as in bring people on for my own learning or challenges or even games. I'm potentially looking to see if I can get, some battle reports done and that sort of thing. And that's a very low priority at the moment, but I mean, if I had somebody come over and play a game and we filmed it and it was cut together well, I would put that video out, and I think it would be well received, because it's not just me talking to a camera. It's not just me talking to my phone again. It would be me with somebody else, and you'd get two different perspectives, and it'd be interesting to explore that kind of dynamic on the channel. So collaboration is definitely something that I'm looking forward to this year, and as I say, there's already a few things teed up for the immediate to near to far future, which I'm so excited and really, really looking forward to sharing with you guys. So, stick around for that. Now, when it comes to the channel itself, what's the channel going to look like this year? Well, it's going to grow, and I am looking forward to seeing it grow. As of recording this video, I have 250 subscribers on the nose, and that's brilliant, considering I started this channel in August of last year. From August through till January, you're looking at what, 4 months? August, September, October, November, December, January, 5 months. So we're not at the 16th yet, so it's 4 and a bit months. I'm really happy and proud that, I've got a channel that's steadily growing, and my skill set is growing with it, and the friends and the connections and the community that I'm fostering and being a part of, or have been accepted into, is growing with it. And I would love to see that growth on the channel, just to have more people see what I'm doing. I'm not a professional painter by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not here doing anything much different to what you've already seen, but what I am doing is chronicling my journey through my hobby and sharing that with you, and it's fun and I enjoy that. I'm not an award-winning painter. I'm not a big personality really. I'm just me. I'm just Matt. The Matt that you see on camera is the Matt that you would experience in the real world. The only difference is I don't swear on my channel. I don't think that's right. If I've got young people watching this who are looking to get into the hobby, the last thing I want to do is sit there and start effing and jeffing for no apparent reason. But apart from, I swear a lot in real life, the Matt you see is the Matt you get, and a lot of people have said that. A lot of people who I've met in the flesh have said, you're exactly the same as what you are in your videos. You're just you. That's really cool. I like that. So to bring that kind of community together and to continue to grow the channel and to improve the quality of the videos that I produce and to keep that consistency, I'm looking to forward plan and book videos in for each week ahead of time. So as of recording this, just a bit behind the curtain here, as of recording this video, I have a video that's getting released today at 6 o'clock. This video that you're watching right now, I scheduled to release in 4 days time, and then tomorrow I'm going to be finishing off my Dark Angels video, which I'm scheduling to release on Friday of next week. And then that puts me a couple of weeks ahead, meaning that I've got plenty of time going into work and having, my spare time and all that sort of stuff. It gives me plenty of time to start building up content that I can release it on time, on schedule, so that at 6 PM GMT on a Friday, Matt's going to be releasing a new video. And that's that. I want to try and do that going forward. The same with Instagram content. I've been trying to build up a little bit more of an Instagram following and trying to build up a more more of my own content, because I've now got a nice little photography setup that I can make, and it's really quite interesting and fun, and I'm enjoying that. So overall, from a content perspective and delivering new content through video, through photo, and potentially through audio as well, I'm hoping something quite cool is going to happen in the the coming weeks and months on that front. This year is going to be a year of growth, both from a skill set perspective, but then also from a channel perspective. In the next few months, I would love to hit 1,000 subs. I think that would be really cool. If I can do that before June, I think that's a tangible goal, based on the volume of videos I've got out already and the content that I'm going to be creating over the next few weeks and months, and the different communities that I'm going to be touching through the different collaborations that I've got planned and I'm in the process of planning. So that growth will be quite interesting. So let's see how that bit goes. Now, the final part of this puzzle is competitions. Now, these aren't competitions I'm running, these are competitions that I'm entering. And I've decided on two competitions that I would like to enter this year. I did have an idea of entering Monte San Sereno. However, I feel that is that's a pipe dream at the moment. I'm not anywhere near the skill level to be able to enter that and also justify the playing out and all that sort of stuff. So there's two that I'm entering, one of which I'm going to be entering within the next couple of days, which is the Squidmar Open. I'll keep it under wraps as to what I'm entering for that, but I'm going to enter that, and there's going to be a video on that once it's all sort of said and done. And then also there's Iron Skull, which is run by the guys from Siege Studios and Paint Perspective podcast. And I'll be entering one, possibly two models into that and seeing how that goes. Now, these are both open format, so that'll be quite an interesting dynamic for a competition. However, I'm very much open to entering other competitions too. So in the comments down below, if you know of a painting competition in the UK that you feel that might be up my strata and you'd like to see me enter, please drop a comment below and I'll have a little look into it. If there are online competitions as well that you feel that would be beneficial for me to know about, again, drop a comment down below. I'd love to see them. So that pretty much rounds off my goals for 2025. So thank you for watching. If you are new around here and you haven't done so already, please feel free to subscribe. You've pretty much got a run of what's going on for the rest of the year, so if any of that tickled your pickle, then feel free to subscribe. If you liked the video and you're keen to see more of this kind of content and the behind the scenes stuff, please drop a like. And if you want to watch the last video of me at Warhammer World, then I'm going to try and do this on this video. It should be a clickable box for you. So I've been Matt, this has been my beard, and thank you for watching this video. Catch you later.